Tonight we travel to medieval India, where some young girls were dedicated to temples in a tradition that shaped their entire lives. Many families believed this dedication was an honor and a way to earn spiritual blessings. After the ceremony, her future would be closely connected to the temple and its daily rituals. She would spend years learning classical dance, music, and religious traditions. But behind the beauty of the ceremonies, life could also bring many hardships that history still debates today. Before the first rays of sunlight reached the temple, her day had already begun. She swept the courtyards, lit oil lamps, and helped prepare the sacred spaces. Every task was performed with care, as it was believed to honor the deity. Hours were spent learning music, graceful dance, and sacred songs. These skills required years of practice, and only the most dedicated students mastered every movement and melody. During festivals, the temple became the heart of the community. Crowds gathered to celebrate, and the performances of the Devadasis were considered an important part of the religious ceremonies. Although she was surrounded by people every day, moments of quiet solitude were common. Much of her life followed the same routines, leaving little freedom to choose a different path. Outside the temple walls, ordinary life continued. Traders bargained, children played, and travelers came and went. Yet for many Devadasis, the temple remained the center of their entire world. As darkness fell, music echoed through the temple halls. Ceremonial dances became part of the evening rituals, creating an atmosphere that visitors often described as both beautiful and unforgettable. For some, temple life offered respect, education, and artistic training. For others, it also brought strict expectations and limited personal choices. Like many parts of history, the reality was complex and varied across different regions and time periods. Some Devadasis also received an education that was uncommon for many people of their time. They learned sacred songs, poetry, and temple traditions that had been passed down through generations. Daily life was not only about music and dance. Preparing offerings, assisting ceremonies, and caring for the temple were all important responsibilities that filled the hours of each day. During major festivals, thousands of worshippers gathered from distant villages. The temple became alive with music, colors, and ceremonies that could continue for days. When the celebrations ended, silence returned. Beneath the moonlight, another day came to a close, and the same routines would begin again before the next sunrise. Before the temple filled with worshippers, every morning began in silence. Fresh flowers were carefully arranged, hundreds of tiny oil lamps were lit, and the sacred halls were prepared for another day of rituals. These quiet moments became part of a routine repeated almost every single day. Years of practice transformed young girls into skilled performers. Every movement carried meaning, every gesture told part of a sacred tradition. Visitors admired the beauty of the performances, often unaware of the years of discipline and dedication hidden behind every graceful step. Festival days transformed the temple into the center of the entire region. Pilgrims traveled from distant villages, bringing gifts and prayers. Music echoed across the courtyards, while colorful celebrations continued from sunrise until long after sunset. As the crowds slowly disappeared, the temple grew quiet once again. Another festival had ended, but daily responsibilities remained unchanged. Tomorrow would begin just like today, following traditions that had continued for generations. Every sunrise began with simple but important duties. Fresh flowers were gathered from the temple gardens before the heat of the day arrived. These flowers would soon decorate shrines, sacred statues, and ceremonial halls, filling the air with gentle fragrance long before the first visitors entered. Not every hour was spent performing ceremonies. Some Devadasis learned to read sacred texts, memorize hymns, and preserve traditions that had survived for centuries. Knowledge was considered just as valuable as graceful movement. Beyond the temple walls, everyday life continued at a different pace. Markets buzzed with traders, travelers shared stories from distant lands, and children played through dusty streets. Yet many Devadasis rarely experienced this freedom for themselves. As night settled over the temple, silence slowly replaced the sounds of music and prayer. The flickering lamps cast long shadows across the stone halls, marking the end of another day lived according to traditions that had guided generations before. As dawn returned once again, the temple slowly came back to life. The scent of fresh flowers mixed with burning incense as priests prepared for another day of worship. Every morning followed a familiar rhythm, unchanged by the passing of the seasons. Music and dance were not simply forms of entertainment. Each performance carried religious meaning and reflected traditions that had been carefully preserved for generations. Mastering these skills required years of patience and dedication. As the celebrations faded into silence, the temple returned to its peaceful rhythm. Beneath the soft glow of the lamps, another day came to an end, while the traditions of the past quietly continued into the next sunrise. Before the temple gates opened, many hours had already been spent preparing for the day's ceremonies. Fresh fruit, rice, milk, and flowers were carefully arranged as sacred offerings. Every task followed traditions that had remained almost unchanged for centuries. As morning prayers began, soft chanting echoed through the stone halls. The sound blended with the gentle glow of hundreds of oil lamps, creating an atmosphere that many visitors described as peaceful and unforgettable. Beyond the temple, life moved in every direction. Merchants traded spices and silk, craftsmen shaped stone and metal, and travelers carried stories from distant kingdoms. The temple stood at the center of a busy and changing world. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, another day quietly came to an end. The routines of temple life would begin again before dawn, continuing a tradition that had shaped countless lives across generations. On important occasions, even kings and queens visited the temple. Royal families donated land, gold, and precious jewels to support religious ceremonies. These gifts helped maintain the temples, turning many of them into powerful cultural and economic centers. Over many generations, temples collected remarkable treasures. Gold, silver, gemstones, and valuable manuscripts were carefully preserved. These temples became not only places of worship, but also centers of learning, art, and culture. Temples were also places where knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. Music, dance, poetry, and religious traditions were taught with great care. Many students spent years mastering these skills under experienced teachers. As the years passed, older Devadasis often watched a new generation begin the same journey they had once started. Their memories carried stories of changing times, reminding us that history is rarely simple. Every life was shaped by its own experiences, and every generation faced a different reality. With age came responsibility. Experienced Devadasis often became teachers, passing down songs, dances, and sacred traditions to the next generation. Every lesson preserved knowledge that had survived for hundreds of years, ensuring that each movement and melody remained unchanged through time. Temples were more than places of worship. They employed sculptors, musicians, painters, metalworkers, and scholars. Hundreds of people depended on the temple for their livelihood, making it one of the busiest places in the kingdom. Merchants traveled from distant kingdoms carrying silk, spices, precious stones, and rare goods. Many stopped at important temples to pray before continuing their journeys, while others made generous donations in hopes of receiving blessings for safe travels. As evening settled across the temple, the sound of bells echoed through the surrounding villages. The warm glow of countless oil lamps transformed the ancient stone walls into a peaceful sanctuary, bringing another day of worship to a gentle close. The seasons changed, but life inside the temple followed its familiar rhythm. During the monsoon, rain washed the stone courtyards clean, while priests and temple servants quietly prepared for another day of worship. Nature changed around them, yet tradition remained remarkably constant. Pilgrims arrived from distant regions, each bringing different customs, languages, and stories. For many travelers, visiting a famous temple was the journey of a lifetime, and its ceremonies left memories they carried home for years. As one generation grew older, another stepped forward to continue the traditions. Knowledge was shared through careful teaching, daily practice, and countless quiet conversations, reminding us that history often survives through people rather than books alone. The story of the Devadasis is neither simple nor the same everywhere. It changed across centuries, kingdoms, and communities. Today, historians continue to study this complex tradition with care, helping us understand both its cultural importance and the difficult realities that many people experienced. Thank you for joining this journey through history, and may your evening be peaceful.